you've been through so many televised debates, either the ones that you moderated or the ones that you've studied subsequently. You've had any number of conversations with colleagues about it, and the people who were, we'll call them for the sake of argument, the victims.
Let's call them candidates. Candidates for being victimized.
So let me give you a very, very general question. All right. Are televised debates really a measure of a candidate's competency to serve as president of the United States?
I warned Dr. Wexler pre-game outside that as somebody who asks questions for a living and judges other people's questions, that I was going to give him a grade on every question he asked.
I was so pleased.
And he was so excited. He suggested it, and I thought it was a really good idea, so I'm going to do it. But I think that was a terrific question.
Thank you. Could you now
Give me an answer.
after that prelude?
Yes, the simple answer is yes. And for reasons that have, now talking now primarily not about the primary campaign debates, but the presidential debates in the fall, the general election debates, the ones that I was involved in. And not only, as you say, not only the ones I was involved in, but those in general. I think they do spew out, and it's a spewing of a process of people, for the most part, who are, at least among the choices, are pretty, you could say, are people who've gone through the various tests and passed them, and some of them have turned out to be good presidents, some of them turned out to be great presidents, some of them turned out to be less or better than both of those phrases, but that's always in the eye of the beholder. But let me tell you why I think they matter, and why they are important, and why they tend to show up various qualities in the individuals that are important, is that because they do come in the late fall, late September, early October. And I checked the polls on this to make sure I was right about this. For the most part, more than 90% of the people, by the time you get to this general election time, that 90% or more of the people have already made up their minds who they're going to vote, or are leaning very strongly one way or another. So what the debates, and why 100 million people watching, is what they're really doing is not so much making a decision, oh, I love this candidate's view on lockboxes and Social Security, I hate this candidate's view on lockboxes and Social Security, or whatever. It has to do with taking the measure of the person. In fact, Michelle Bachmann talked about this last night. I'm sure all of you watched that. I will not ask for a show of hands, but anyhow, she talked about, and I've always talked about, that that's what those debates are about. Because even if you've already decided you're going to vote for Billy Bob, but you're still watching Sammy Sue, because Sammy Sue might in fact end up being the president of the United States. So the thing is, you're not making a decision about issues. You're making a decision of your own. You say, hey, I think this person, I can imagine this person sitting behind a desk in the Oval Office. I can imagine this person making a considered decision about sending Americans into harm's way. I can imagine this person reacting to another Katrina, another 9/11, or whatever. So it's a presidential temperament issue as much as it is whether you're for or against various issues. And that's why I think they tend to, we can go through some of the details if you want in past debates, yeah, about where I think these things have shown up, either positively or negatively, and affected the outcome.
From the perspective of the public, and I realize you're not with the public, you're sometimes with a select audience, you're sometimes alone with the candidates. But what does the public really want? What are they looking for? You described ideally what it can do. But are they looking for reasoned debate, or are they looking for a Roman arena in the debates? What do they really want?
Well, everybody wants different things. And what they get is not a Roman debate. It's usually a very quiet. They're all very quiet for the most part, because the rules that are negotiated by the candidates and the debate commission, and the moderator does not have anything to do with those rules. The moderator only enforces those rules, but they are aimed at keeping things quiet. And for instance, you'll notice in these primary debates, everybody, if not, you like to, if you're in the audience and you like to hear people, yay, or there were some noises last night of negative stuff when somebody said something. When you listen, or when you listen to one of the presidential debates or vice presidential debates in the fall, you don't hear any noise, even though there are people in the hall, because the rules are such. And when I'm the moderator, I stand up in front of them and I say, hey, look, you are not here to participate. You're not here to have a competing pep rallies about these candidates. You are here to remain absolutely silent. You are an invited guest. This is for the American people, the people who are watching this on television. Stay out of it. And then I always say to them, if you make any noise at all, no kissing, no grooming, no applauding, no anything, if you make any noise at all, I'm going to point you out and make you stand up in front of everybody you've ever known in the world. And I usually appoint, there's always a spouse of one of the candidates sitting on the front row. And once I appointed Barbara Bush to maintain order in the hall. And she looked around and, thought, I'm really, that worked. It worked like a charm. Nobody said a word after that. But it is, I don't remember what your question was. I'm sorry.
Reason debate versus, rubber gladiators.
Well, the gladiator thing is a myth. There have never been really, at least in the national political arena, very few what you call national gladiator things. Most of the things that would fall into that category would be if somebody really took somebody on and accused somebody of something. And there's very little of that in terms of personal. I mean, I have in the debates I've moderated, I've offered opportunities for candidates to go after somebody on a character issue, particularly Bob Dole against Bill Clinton. And Dole said, no, I'm not going to do it. And as I say, by the time we from the other point of view, it's as I say, you don't. It's not. If somebody's looking for a exposition of the comparative views of candidates, you will get that, because if it's well done, and for the most part they are well done, you won't get everything, but you will get that, because it's kind of a review, for the most part, of the issues that have come up during the campaign. In my case, I have an absolute rule: I never bring up anything new. I don't want, because you could just suddenly say, hey, Dr. Wexler, you're supposed to know something about the candidate. You're supposed to know something about foreign affairs. Let's start here. Let's go through some things. By the way, let's start with who's the Prime Minister of Uzbekistan? Embarrassing. And I'm not going to do that, because that's not what it's about. It's about closure. The only time the voters have to see the candidates of the comparative things on the same stage at the same time talking about the same thing. So, sorry for my long answer.
No, it's okay, but isn't it true that sometimes, and just based on what you wrote in the book, you didn't talk so much about, sometimes there were emails, sometimes emails haven't been invented yet, in some of these debates, but sort of the feeling of, why wasn't Jim tougher? Why didn't he, ask really more pointed questions? And I realized that later in the book you talked about being a gentleman and how you treat people, whether it's an interview or whether the moderator. So is that what informs the way that you run it?
It does. It does. I have been doing the news hour or the earlier manifestations of it for 36 years now, and I know there are people. There may be some people right here in this room who've been watching for 36 years, waiting for that program. When I ask some senator a question, and the senator answers, and I say, liar! It hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. It goes back to our basic DNA with the news hour, and it started with Robert McNeil, and of course I was with him on this. We're in the civilized discourse business, and I always believe that any audience, whether it's a presidential debate audience or the news hour audience, is just as smart as I am. And if I ask Billy Bob a question, Billy Bob doesn't answer it. So I say, well, blah, 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 blah. And I say, yes, but the question was, blah, 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 again. So then the issue is, do you ask it a third time, or do you say, hey, you didn't answer the question? Well, My way of doing it is to figure out a way, to say it in a very polite way, or assume, okay, move on. This person clearly is not going to answer it, the audience knows that, and it's not my job to make judgment calls like that, whether the person did or didn't answer the question adequately. So to answer your question, yes. The answer to your question is yes.
Given that we've had,
But does my attitude toward this inform the way the questions are asked?
the notion of a civilized way of dealing with someone rather than going for, trying to push them into saying something that they really don't want to say. There have been a lot of debates. It's a fairly recent phenomenon, really, when you look at the whole range of how long we've been in the business of electing presidents. We had the 60s, and then with Nixon Kennedy, and then a little hiatus, and then back again. Could you imagine ever somebody saying, I'm running, but I'm just not going to participate in this debate, getting away with it?
Nope, not now. That's done. That's behind. That is
Horse out of the barn.
out of the barn. It's out of the barn forever. And no candidate, no nominee for a major party would get away with saying, it's part of as much a part of the process as signing the papers to be a candidate in Iowa or New Hampshire.
You know, one of the things we always wonder about when we watch these debates is how much of it is rehearsed. Not your part, but how much by the candidates. How rehearsed is it? And you know, every so often you get off a really good line. You kind of wonder, were they holding that line? It's when I read Churchill's quotes, because he's the master of the quotes, I wonder, you know, does he sit somewhere and pick these up and just hope that he's in the right situation so we can let loose? So I'm going to read one, and I want to ask you whether this was something that you think was just off the cuff or rehearsed. So of course it was one of the more famous ones. It came in the debate when Dan Quayle was running for vice president, and he was trying to explain his view. And his opponent, he sort of compared himself to John Kennedy, and Lloyd Benson, who was running against him, jumped on him and said, Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you are no Jack Kennedy. Now, was that just a great spontaneous comeback, or was that a rehearsed line that he was just waiting?
That was, well, let me put it this way. I had, as you mentioned, I had the privilege of talking to one-on-one with just about all of the candidates who run for president and vice president, were nominees and enemies.
Except for Benson, I understood.
Except for Benson, because Benson had a stroke and was not able to talk to me. But he had talked to other reporters before about that line. He said, "Oh no, it just came to me." And just in preparation for my book, I talked to some folks still around who were Benson aides. The fact of the matter is, Quayle had used that, because remember, he was under attack all the time.
He used the Kennedy line.
Yeah, the Kennedy line. And he had used it many times because he was under attack all the time because he wasn't experienced. So he said many times during the campaign, he compared himself to Kennedy in terms of experience. And during the debate prep, one of these two people who were there told me that one of the people said to Benson, Quayle's going to say that again. If he brings it up again, you might just say, Jack Kennedy or something like that. And so what's interesting about the one-liners is I asked every one of these candidates about their Reagan's one-liners, famous one-liners, and all that stuff. And of all of them, and Reagan denied that he had memorized any of these ahead of time. Everything was spontaneous. With one exception, it was candidates. Everyone I had was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, oh sure, we worked on one-liners all the time. I don't look for ways to use them. I mean, Clinton, as I've said before, if Clinton had his way, he and I would still be talking about this. Because he's a professional politician. And it's shop talk for him. And he said, well, what I do is we work out these really great lines, and then I try to use them if I could, and all of that. And I said, well, were you successful? And he said, well, not really. Then he gave me a couple of examples that were nothing in the league with what Reagan's line was or what Benson's line is, but they all do it. And you can watch them in these primary debates. You can see they're doing the same thing because it goes to the territory.
Yeah, I got the sense that most of the candidates, former candidates, whether they run for president or not, that you interviewed, pretty much okay with the debates. You know, they had their concerns, they had their moments, great, except for George Bush Sr.
Yeah.
He seemed to want to have nothing to do with this. Why? What was the thing?
Well, he was very straight about it. In fact, all these people were straight, for the most part. There were a couple of exceptions, but I talked to them long enough after what everything had happened. So they were anyhow, and they were professionals, and they wanted to talk about it as shop talk, like Clinton. But the problem with what George H.W. Bush said, I said, "What's your problem?" What? I didn't say what's your problem, Mr. President. Why is it that you hate these debates so? And he said, "Well, first of all, I wasn't very good at it. And if you don't do very well at something, you just do not do it." And I'm paraphrasing, but that's about what he said. And I said, well, you know, a lot of people think, Mr. President, that these things should be required, not just, you know, whether you could be forced to do them or not. He said, no way. That should be the sole decision of every candidate. And if it works politically to have a debate, have one. If it doesn't, don't have one. I'm sorry, debate lovers, that's how I feel about it. He was really, exercised about it.
But didn't do him very much. Didn't do much good.
Oh, no, well, he was really still exercising. I talked to him about 7 or 8 years after the White House, and he was still exercised by the famous watch-ins. Y'all remember the watch-ins? He was running with it against Perot and Clinton, and he was involved. Bush looked at his watch several times during this debate, and when I asked him about that,
He had another appointment.
I asked him a hard-hitting question about it. I said, and we're one-on-one interview. The camera here, camera there is for a documentary, and I said something, you know, like, what was that watch thing all about, Mr. President? And he said, yeah. He said, oh, the watch thing. He said, and I hear again, I'm paraphrasing, he almost leapt at me, you know, across the, we were sitting like you and I are talking, you know, we were facing each other. And he said, oh yeah, he said, hey, this man looked at his watch. How in the world could he be qualified to be President of the United States? Yeah, throw him out. Oh, I said, well, Mr. President, some people thought you were looking at your watch because you wanted to know how much longer you're damn right, that's why I looked at that. And he said, and I quote, I wanted to know how much longer this crap was going to go on. Then he leaned across at me. Now, keep in mind, these 2 TV cameras are rolling on tape. You know, he goes down, he said, and Jim, you can put that in your documentary. And I said very quickly, until he calmed down a minute, I said, you know, Mr. President, you just did. He really despises it.
It seems like one of the things that we learned right from the beginning, right from 1960, is that it doesn't always matter what you say, but how you look, your body language during the debate seems to be so crucial in creating impression. And I do want to go back to 1960 because you have a great quote in here from Richard Nixon, who afterwards said, I paid too much attention to what I would say and too little to how I would look. And that clearly hurt him, and I think you record the fact that people who listened to that same debate on the radio thought that Nixon had won, and the ones who listened to it, who watched it on the television, thought that Kennedy had won. So, taking that as a given, I'm going to move the dateline forward a little bit. I'm going to talk about the 2000 Gore-Bush debates. And you have a split screen, which means that while Bush was talking, you could still see how Gore was responding to all of that. And how did he respond during that debate to Bush?
Well, Bush was talking, and Gore was, like he was in pain. He couldn't believe his dumb dodo was thinking about stupid things. And what was interesting about it, from my point of view, was that I was the closest one to him. I mean, this was at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, and the moderator was sitting about like where Stan the man is sitting right here, and the candidates standing at a podium, like here, like there, and everybody else was behind, you know. And I was aware there were split screens, but I had a rule, and was that I would never ever look at the person who was speaking. I would always look at the person I mean, I would always look at, the other way, I would always look at the person who's speaking, not at the person who's listening. Because I don't want to have eye contact with somebody and in any way affect the reactions. So when the thing was over, so my family was there in Boston, and I was walking out of the hall, and one of our daughters, Amanda, was walking next to me, and we were walking out, and she said, "Oh, Dad, oh, that was something, and Gore did it." And I stopped. I said, "Darling, what did Gore do?" And she said, all that sign, she said, "Smart kid." She said, "That's going to be the story of the debate." And of course, I hadn't seen any of it. It was completely unaware, and I was the closest one to it because of where I lived. But the same thing applied. I mean, it was the Kennedy-Nixon thing all over again. It showed Gore. Here again, didn't have anything to do with content. The same thing applied. People who saw that on television thought that Gore had lost, and had lost, not that Bush had won, but Gore had lost because they didn't like it. They didn't like that kind of, stuff. And they were kind of even when the polls at that point, when that thing started after the first debate in 2000, Gore fell behind and stayed that way. I mean, it was back and forth and very close. He picked up a little bit toward the end, and of course, as we know, the contested result of that election. But there was no question that sign. I mean, you think, why is that important? Well, it was, here again, goes back to what I said earlier. People took the measure of the gun, and people didn't like it. And it didn't have anything to, there weren't huge issues that separated them at the time, as people saw it at least. And so they made the decision on whether or not this is a pleasant person. And it really hurt Gore.
Now, subsequently, did they get rid of this cutaway where you could see?
Well, they tried to negotiate it away, and they were semi-successful. What they do is the broadcast networks do a pool, broadcast, do the actual technical broadcasting, and they go from network to network to network to network. And the network got their back up and said no, because the candidates after that wanted to negotiate no cutaways, no split screens. You stayed on one shot or whatever the whole time. And the networks refused to do that. And so they got kind of in between. And you could take a reaction shot of them together and all that, but you cannot do a split screen. You've seen split screens and since then as a result of that. And but these change a little bit every election cycle. There are new candidates and new candidate handlers and new debate commission people, so some of the rules change.
Did McCain have a similar problem in 2008?
Absolutely. I did everything. Those of you all who watch know that I made an absolute fool of myself trying to get McCain to look, much less address Obama. He wouldn't do it. Wouldn't even look at it. And this was the first debate in Arlington, Mississippi, and the rules had been opened up so the candidates for the first time really could ask each other questions and direct comments to each other. And McCain would answer a question. I'd say, "Well, say it right too, Senator Obama," and he would do it. He just wouldn't do it. And finally, I said, "Well, say it again." And he said, "What's the matter? You afraid nobody can hear me?" Enough of this. So I gave it up. Well, here again, he came over as kind of ornery and agitated and angry, and seemed like he was dissing Obama, and it hurt him. No question about it, because Obama, every time I say, look to McCain, Obama will do it, and in other words, he was playing the game, but it takes two to play, and it hurt. There's no question it hurt McCain.
I'm going to ask you this a little later, but since you brought up this whole issue of urging them to address, you did a little bit more than just urge them. You urged them once, twice, 3 times.
So I said, I made a fool of myself.
In Yiddish, we have a word that's called a nudge. So, do you think you overdid it a little bit on that one? Yeah?
I did.
Were you frustrated? Is that what you did?
Well, I don't, I just, those things just respond. And first of all, I was stunned. I was surprised. Because he had to go, his people had to negotiate those things. This was not, me deciding these people should look at each other. This is part of the deal. It was written. It was written in the agreement. So, but I had a feeling afterward, and I just couldn't bring myself, and haven't to this day. I mean, I probably should. but I never asked any of the McKean people whether or not they ever told John McKean those were the rules. You know, because sometimes these things happen, these handlers go in there and they do the negotiating, and maybe McKean was told he didn't pay attention, because he seemed not to know what the hell was going on. And I thought that surprised me. And I think that caused me to, as I said, go a little further, a little longer with this thing than I should have, but once it's done, it's done.
Okay.
It's the only mistake I ever made. Wrong. Anybody believes that, believes anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, on page 4, I have.
No.
We haven't gotten to that yet. But so clearly the moderator has a key role, and I appreciate the fact in the book, and I hope you all will read the book, that you'll see.
Well, they have to read it. It's required.
That's required. You signed it, they have to read it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you warn moderators, and I guess this extends to interviewers generally, to avoid the temptation, and it is a temptation, to inject yourself too much into the process. You're there to ask the questions, not to comment yourself on issues. But it's interesting to see how different moderators handle these kinds of things. And I'd like to go through a few of these. To be fair, I'm going to start with a few moderators that aren't you, but then we'll get to you.
You're going to work down to me.
Exactly. Right. So I want to, so these are all pals of yours. So let me start it with your buddy Peter Jennings.
Okay.
All right. So 1988, the Bush-Dukakis debate. There's a commission on presidential debates.
Mm-hmm.
I assume they give you the framework within which you are supposed to work, correct?
Just the format,
Right.
Not subject matter.
No, not subject matter, but the
Okay,
format.
sure, exactly.
So then I don't remember if it was 3 or 4 of you at that time, were sitting around, and Peter Jennings has this bright idea. Let's throw out the rules, and let's just get them to address each other directly.
Right.
Now, you took the high road on that one, and said that you either feigned or felt shocked that he would.
Shocked.
That he was, but leaving it aside, and he's not with us anymore, but was that just unorthodox, what he was suggesting, or a little bit unethical, given that he had accepted the job to do the moderating according to certain rules?
Well, I took the position it would have been unethical for us to have done that. And the other two, there were 3 journalist panelists and me, the moderator. There were 4 of us. And behind these closed doors is Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the night before the debate. And that was the first thing Jennings said. And the thing that I hadn't thought about until the book came out, because the other 2 reporters, one was Annie Grohr, that was then with the Orlando paper, and the other was John Maschke, who was with the Atlanta paper. Annie and John agreed with me, so it became a non-issue. And Jennings said, okay, fine, that's it, great. And he was very gracious, and no problem, we went ahead and did it the way we should have done it. What I did not think about until some people started asking me after I started going door to door selling his book, and somebody said, well, what would you have done if the other 2 reporters had agreed with Jennings? I thought, oh my God, all I can tell you is I'm just so glad that didn't happen. And I've thought about it since. I would have thrown in the towel. In other words, I would have called the debate people and say, hey, look, here's what 3 out of the 4 people want to do, and I think I would have done that. I hope I would have done that. Thank God I didn't have to make that kind of decision.
Bernard Shaw. In the book, you talk about something that you refer to as killer questions that they have in the debates. So let's talk about a killer question. And I think for me, it's the one that I remember most of all of the questions that were ever, in presidential debate. And that was Bernard Shaw's famous question to Michael Dukakis. And I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to pick up the book and read Dukakis' answer, and then I have a question for you. So this was the question that Bernard Shaw asked. Of Michael Dukakis. If Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor an irrevocable death penalty for the killer? And if I can do this without glasses, I'll try.
Want me to hold it out for you?
No, I can hold it out myself. Thank you. This is what he said. No, I don't, Bernard. and I think you know that I've opposed the death penalty during all of my life. I don't see any evidence that it's a deterrent, and I think there are better and more effective ways to deal with violent crime. We've done so in my own state, and it's one of the reasons why we've had the biggest drop in crime of any industrial state in America, and why we have the lowest murder rate of any industrial state in America. Why did that answer hurt him so much?
Because people saw that as an emotional question. And why it hurt him was it was a confirming answer. In other words, the rap on Dukakis was that he was a cold fish, that he was wankish, and that he wasn't really connected to the human spirit, so to speak. And his answer confirmed that. And I asked him about that in my interview with him. I said, "What happened? Why did you do that?" And he said, "Look," he said, "I've been governor of Massachusetts. I've been dealing with capital punishment as an issue all my life in public life, and I just saw that as a public issue question. I did not as an issue. I did not see it as emotional." And he said to me, he said, if I had my way and I could find that killer, I would grab him and kill him myself with my bare hands. But of course I wouldn't do that, because then he could have said exactly what he said, he'd have been fine. And what was interesting to me is that very night, after when it was over, David Broder, remember the late David Broder, dean of the political reporter, he worked for the Washington Post, said that night, it's over for Dukakis. And because it was a confirming thing, it's like the watch thing. The watch thing hurt George H.W. Bush. Bill Clinton told me, he said, "Look, if I had looked at my watch, or Perot had looked at his watch, nobody would have given a damn. Nobody would have paid any attention." But the reason the watch thing hurt George H.W. Bush, because remember he had that thing, he couldn't make the check-in thing work in the grocery store, and that was a confirming thing. He was disconnected and all of that. And this was really what the problem was with Dukakis. And Dukakis told me, he said, I'm still not sure that it was a mistake, but it was me. In other words, that's the way I felt about it, and that's what I did.
That was the outcome of the question, but let's go back now to the question of the question.
Okay.
So, before the actual debate, the debate colleagues, as you like to call them,
Yeah.
met and to go over their questions. I assume to make sure they weren't stepping on each other's toes, there was some clarity. And Bernard Shaw shared that question with his colleagues before. Was that unusual? I mean, the
No,
whole
it's
notion of
unusual.
sharing questions before, is that unusual?
They've always done it. And the reason is it's so you don't overlap. But also, everybody knows what's going on. So if you're so inclined, none of them ever were. But if you're so inclined, the next panelist could ask a follow-up to an answer to a question that was just asked. But the idea was basically to so all the panelists would know what was going to be on the table. And in this case, but Shaw knew what he had. Shaw knew he had some dynamite. He had created some dynamite, and he was reluctant to tell the other three. The other three, by the way, are still around. Ann Compton, ABC, Andrew Mitchell, NBC, and Margaret Warner, who was in with Newsweek, but of course now is with the NewsHour, the great, the wonderful PBS NewsHour, without Jim Lehrer. But at any rate, these three, Andrea, Ann, and Margaret, were outraged at that question and tried to talk him out of it. And it really made Bernie mad. He's still mad. He's still angry about it.
But he's asking a question about rape.
Right?
Kitty Dukakis was sitting right there in the front, hearing this whole thing, and was herself very upset about the question apparently afterwards.
At the time.
So here he's hearing three women expressing their opinion that this was out of bounds to ask, and he persisted. So you said, the moderator should never make it about himself, but I'm wondering here, to what extent was he making it about, he knew he had something that was going to be written about the next day. He knew he had something that could trip Dukakis up, and was that really why he just persisted?
Well, what he says, the reason he persisted is because he felt that was a revealing question. And in other words, it revealed something that the public should know about a candidate. And that's his argument. And it still is his argument. My own view, and I've told him this, I'm not a big believer in hypothetical questions, number one. I think a question that is designed for people to remember the question is faulty thinking for a moderator. I think the last thing in the world you want people talking about are your questions when it's over. It's all about the answers, for God's sake. It's about what the candidates have in mind. What about, but Bernie has spoken for himself on that, and I will, it's all in the book, and I will leave it there.
All right. But apparently the story didn't end quite there, because he had another
Still
level.
going on as we
Well,
speak.
he had another level of outrage, because he decided, through what he was told, that these women had leaked
That's
the
right.
question to, I guess, someone higher up in their own organizations, and they denied it. The other people said yes. We'll probably never know
Never know.
exactly what happened.
No, that's exactly right. And he believed that they did leak it, and he thought it was somebody, it was Ann Compton who leaked it to ABC because somebody at ABC had said something he knew that question was coming. And when Bernie asked it, Bernie, as I say, Bernie's still upset about it. And the three, and of course, Ann Compton has denied this, and now she's upset. And everybody's upset. And
Well, it's only been 25 years.
I know that what's so weird to me, interesting to me was, of course, I didn't know any of this. I just kind of stumbled on this as I was doing my research for this book. And I realized, my God, I've got an interesting little story here. But once I got into it, I had to tell the whole story. And it was, and I finally concluded, you know, in the book, that the lesson from this, you've got, there were 5 people, all America's top journalists, and they heard different things, and they disagreed about the facts. And the point I made in the book is that everybody in journalism should keep in mind that this happens all the time when they are on the other side of it, and it's a good lesson for everybody in journalism to remember. I've always said, if I was the king or the god, I would say the first thing I would require in journalism is that everybody have a story written about it. And they'll find out their middle initial will be wrong, their address will be wrong. They will, oh, he was born in Texas, no, he was really born in, in other words, facts, and how sloppy journalism can be about the facts. And in this case, it was a lesson for these journalists and for all journalists to remember that people, an eyewitness is the single most unreliable witness there is, as we all know. And that is truly the case, even if there are journalists whose job it is to pay very close attention.
You ever think that journalists, I've heard this said sometimes, that journalists have raised the right to know to such an ethical imperative that sometimes they lose sight that there are other ethical imperatives in the world, privacy, other kinds of things. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think it is fair. I think it's a lot grayer than some journalists believe. I believe all of life is gray. I mean, there are very few black and white things in terms of issues and stuff like that. I mean, nobody's 100% right, nobody's 100% wrong. The only issue is where you come in there. And that involves journalists as well as it does everybody else, including presidents of universities.
Absolutely. So let me turn to another moderator. Absolutely. Jim Lehrer. We'll talk about him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So even before the Monica Lewinsky affair blew up, and there were questions raised about President Clinton, affairs with women, and you found yourself moderating the Clinton-Dole debate in Hartford in 1996, and you really gave Dole some good openings to talk about Clinton's ethical or unethical behavior, ethical standards.
Lobs, I threw him some lobs, a couple of lobs.
But he didn't take you out once. Why do you think he refused to make it an issue? It wasn't just with you. He just didn't make it an issue in the campaign.
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 parts to that. I think one of them is he really honestly believed that that's not the kind of stuff you ought to talk about in a presidential election. I mean, I give Bob Dole credit for that. He believed that. There was something else, though, that I didn't know at the time when I was running those debates. that the Washington Post and one other news organization was working on the story that Bob Dole had had a love affair while he was married for 18 years with a woman who was single. And Dole was separated from his wife, but he had this, it was not only, a love affair, he lived with her for 18 years in a very open way. And but nobody had ever reported it or whatever, because nobody really knew about it, etc. And the Post was working on the story literally that week that I was about to do that debate in Hartford, and I didn't know that. And then when I asked Kemp, when Dole didn't answer, I re-asked again, though, just 5 days later, when I did the Kemp Gore thing. I said, because people came down all over Dole for not reacting. In other words, Republicans got upset with Dole that he didn't take on Clinton on the woman issue, they call it. And then Kemp wouldn't do it either. When I asked him right at the first, I said, you and Senator Dole have been criticized for not jumping on this. What do you have to say about it? He gave some dodo answer. He hadn't really, he didn't go, in other words, they weren't going to do that. And I think, I don't know, I honestly do not know how influenced Dole was by the fact that he knew the story was coming, or thought the story was coming, and he decided, well, he just didn't want to get into it, or he honestly believed that it wasn't relevant. I give him credit. I've known him a long time, and I give him credit for, he's always had a tart tongue, and he's always been sharp, but he's never really ever hit anybody on personal things before, and mostly on issues. So I give him credit there, but I keep building on that, on the factor.
When you hit Kemp with the same question 3 days later, didn't you feel like you were digging a little bit? Did you feel like you were representing the disappointment that people had?
Yes.
I thought it wasn't that you were trying to...
No. I was not trying to be Billy Bob show off. My deal was that there had been many stories from named Republicans who said, what's going on here? There's a character issue here. You can wipe the floor with this guy. Why aren't you doing, it was all and Kemp will do it. Kemp will do it. And it was all the pundits, everybody said that. And so I decided, well, I'll give Kemp an opportunity to do it right at the beginning, to get behind us one way or another. And Kemp, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something, he made a joke out of it. I said, I went to a Christmas too long, Don, but anyhow, I got out there, and he punted, and that was the end of it, and it didn't come up again.
But it did sound in his response to me, at least, that he was trying to say, we're going to take the high road.
Exactly, he said a statement. He said, Senator Dole has said, and I'm with him on this, we are not going to talk about issues of personal nature. We're here to talk about differences on issues that matter, and we're going to be the President of the United States here. We're not having, whatever. I mean, his answer was had the right ring to it.
So Clinton got a pass, at least for a while.
Yeah.
In your book, you make a speculation. I think it's the only out-and-out speculation you make in that sense, where you say, might Bill Clinton have been more careful in his personal life afterward if the woman character issue had been raised with more public force in the 1996 debates? Come on. You really think so? You really think so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it just occurred to me as I was writing the book.
Was that wishful thinking? I don't know what that was.
Well, no, I'm really thought about it. Don't you? What do you think? I mean,
I think no.
You think no? I don't have to read his book. That if the issue is raised, that maybe Bill Clinton would, well, never mind, okay?
No, I'm teasing you a little bit. Obviously, everybody responds to, can I get away with it or can't I get away with it?
Exactly.
And your argument would be, that
They can get away with it.
Dole made it feel like you can get away with it. Republicans made it feel like
forget it. He could, and that if they had really made an issue of that, and if it affected the outcome. In other words, he won by 17 points, but let's say he won by 3 points, and it came down at the end. It might have been chasing, and but he had second thoughts about the 21-year-old intern? I don't know. That was just a question. I was
So
asking.
here's the irony.
Yeah.
Now we're moving forward.
I know what you're going to say.
Okay, so then, when the story broke about Monica Lewinsky,
Yeah.
guess who was interviewing Bill Clinton? Jim Lehrer. Okay. And I'm only going to quote a little excerpt, but it'll get to the. So, Clinton, there is no improper relationship, and I intend to cooperate with the inquiry. Lehrer, no improper relationship. Define what you mean by that. Clinton, well, I think you know what it means. It means that there is not a sexual relationship, an improper sexual relationship, or any other kind of improper relationship. Lehrer, you had no sexual relationship with this young woman. Clinton, there is not a sexual relationship. That is accurate. Okay, what'd you miss?
Is.
You want to elaborate a little bit? In case anyone else didn't catch it?
Well, it was the beginning of the big is thing. And it was the first interview done. And I was asking questions in the past tense, as he just read, and he was answering in the present tense. When I got, it was a long, involved story, which I will not tell you how it happened. I happened to be doing the interview just because it was already scheduled as a preview to the upcoming State of the Union address. And but instead of talking about Bosnia and things like that, we talked about this other thing. And but anyhow, I was surprised the interview came off, but it did. And we let everybody in the world have it live when we did it live from the room next to the old office. But anyway, it was a big deal. When I went to, for me, it was a huge deal. And I went all over the world and all that sort of stuff. And I got back to my office, and because it was broadcast live everywhere, we called my wife, and Kate said, nice things about my interview, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, how good her wonderful husband was. And she said, oh, by the way, one of the girls called, we have 3 grown daughters. One of the girls called, and she picked up something that I hadn't picked up, is that you were speaking in the past tense, and you were saying is all over. I was mortified. I thought, this is the end of my career. The only reason I escaped is because it became a story so big that I was small potatoes by the time. And later in the day, the Clinton people did issue a statement in the past tense. The reason my girls, by the way, said, Dad, why did you put that in the book? Why did you admit all of that stuff and all the mistakes you made? And I said, well, I just felt like I'm writing about everybody else's mistakes. I had to cop out to mine. But the thing that I've always argued, to our folks all the time, and argued in the book, is the whole thing about getting ready for an interview, or much less a presidential debate. Doing your homework is all designed so you can listen. It's not so you can write nifty questions. You can eventually come up with a nifty question. But you've got to be comfortable enough to be able to listen so you'll know what somebody is this. It's the old story, and I mentioned it in the book that I make up all the time when I make a talk about all this stuff. Is that, I'm interviewing a senator. I say, Senator, should we sell more grain to Cuba? Yes, Jim, I think we should sell more grain to Cuba, but before we do that, we should bomb Havana. And I move in with a quick follow-up question. What kind of grain, Senator? Just went right by. And that's exactly what happened to me in that Clinton interview. And it just, because all I would have to do, if I'd heard it, all I had to do is say, why are you speaking in the present tense? And open up a whole other thing. And, but I didn't. And I remain sad to this day. Thanks for asking me. How did all these folks in Los Angeles listen to me?
In 2008, you moderated Obama McCain.
Yeah.
And of course, you were supposed to be focusing on foreign policy.
Right.
And right before you go on stage, every moderator's nightmare, something big breaks having to do with the financial downturn. And you're left with the dilemma of how do I work this in? Everybody's thinking about that, and I'm supposed to be talking about something else. But you resolved it by basically, the very first question, rather than asking them about, well, you kind of finessed it first. You said, we're going to talk about foreign policy, which of course includes the global financial meltdown. And then your first question had nothing to do with the global financial meltdown. You asked about the recovery.
Sure.
Now, they thought they were going to debate about foreign policy. So was this a bit of an ambush? Or did you just figure this is, any candidate needs to be able to hit this right away?
No, I told everybody what I was going to do.
You did.
I felt that it's fair. I'm not there to ambush people. So I told the debate commission, I said, look, I have made a decision that the national security and foreign policy of the United States is affected in a very serious way by the financial crisis. And I'm going to ask about that at the beginning. I didn't ask their permission. I just told them I was going to do it. And I said, from my point of view, you should feel free to tell the candidates that. Because remember, there was this thing of, and McCain might not even come because of the financial crisis, and he didn't decide until that day that he was going to even come. And so that's what happened. And the problem for me, in personal terms, is I don't know a damn thing about the financial crisis. So I had to do a lot of homework quickly. I knew I had spent a lot of time on Iraq and all kinds of other things. And anyhow, that's about how that happened.
Well, that leads me right into the next question, which is how do you prepare? Just take us through it. You're going to do a debate. You've got, I don't know, how much time you know in advance usually for these kind of debates?
Sometimes a couple of weeks, sometimes very few days.
All right. So what happens?
Well, what happens is that, from my point of view, is first thing I want to, but fortunately, remember, doing the news hour every day, 5 days a week, I've been covering the campaign. So it isn't like I've just been dropped out of nowhere. It's okay now to do a presidential debate about issues. I've already been covering the issues. I've already been covering what the candidates have been saying and all of that. But what I have to do for a debate is, okay, just cut them up. And it's all right, here is what I think are the most important things. Based on what's been in the campaign, these are the things I want to ask about. But I don't tell anybody that. I just, then I go through using people on the staff of the news hour, all the kinds of research that I think I need to know about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then I start thinking of questions, and I think of where I would begin and where I would go, and trying to remembering what the rules are in a given debate and all of that. And then, as I say, I work toward what I've always worked for since I've been in journalism for 50 years now. Is the click, what I call the click. When I'm ready to write a story. I'm ready to ask a question. I'm ready to run a debate. And the click comes when I'm comfortable enough, as I say, to be able to listen to the answers and to know enough to be able to discern, okay, that's really important, and I need to go with that. I need to follow up on that. That's no big deal. Move on, and have something to move on with, and to know and try to keep it coherent and all of that. And because I've written a lot of fiction, I'm also a little bit experienced at being able to see things. In other words, I can imagine what's going to happen. I'm going to say this, he's going to say that, blah, 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 blah. So I go through this, I just try to walk through it and walk through it, going over and over and over again. It's a very, very exhausting kind of thing. Because the one thing I do not want to do, and it drives me all the way, is I don't want to say anything or do anything that affects the outcome of the debate, much less the outcome of the presidential election. I don't want to say, if it hadn't been for Lehrer here, this would have happened, that would not. No, I want to be invisible. And I argue that I've told the debate commission this, when you pick debate moderators, for God's sake, don't pick anybody who doesn't already have the best job they're ever going to get. In other words, not anybody who's auditioning for something, nobody who wants to be a star, nobody who wants to use the debate for some purpose other than to be a catalyst for the candidates to say what they have to say. It's because it is like holding dynamite in your hands. I mean, you could very easily, I just use Uzbekistan as an example. I mean, you could very easily ask questions that could really embarrass people and hold them up to ridicule. I just don't think that's the point of the presidential debate. And so I'm a fanatic about it.
no matter how much you prepare though, and no matter how much you're in the loop in terms of news and what's going on, and particularly what's going on in the campaign, it's very hard to control every single detail
Oh,
of
absolutely.
what you're gonna ask. So, have you ever gotten your facts wrong in a question, either in a question or in a rejoinder?
Yes.
Would you be interested in sharing with us what might have happened?
Bush Gore. I had said to Bush or Gore, anyhow, the way it came up, I was asking each one about what's the worst thing the other had said about the other. And it was the Farragut first invasion of Boston. And I said, well, Vice President Gore, you said to, we were right there together, of course. I said, you said here that Governor Bush is a dodo or something, doesn't have a sense of coming out of the rain, something like that. And I'm paraphrasing, okay? And
Not by much.
yeah, and Gore said, I never said anything like that. I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, you had it in one of your commercials. He said, I don't think it's in one of my commercials. And Bush responded to that, and it's fine. Well, turns out it wasn't in a Gore commercial. Gore's press secretary had said it in a statement. I didn't make it up. I mean, I used the quotes. And but I was technically wrong. And Gore people came down on me with a hammer because it wasn't a commercial. It was a press statement from the press secretary. So I felt obligated in front of 100 million people at the beginning of the next debate, which was in St. Louis, to confess error, to admit that I had made a mistake and all of that. And of course, George W. Bush looks at me like, what's the difference? I said, this and that. And a lot of people thought that, but I felt obligated to do that. That's the only example I can think of.
Well, let me help you. The also has some uncomplimentary things to say about you.
Yeah.
How seriously do you take that? I mean, how thick-skinned, thin-skinned are you when you hear something like that?
I tell everybody, in fact, we're going to open this up to questions eventually to you all, and I'll give you the guidelines to your questions. I'm not a pundit, and I do not handle criticism well. So, I'm thin-skinned about it because I'm probably, Kate, my wife, would say, he doesn't handle criticism at all. And so, well, but in this case, what I was upset about, thin-skinned, what I am thin-skinned about, if somebody suggests that there's an integrity issue, in other words, that I may have made, everybody makes mistakes, including super moderators. But it's one thing to make an honest mistake, another to make a political mistake. In other words, you make a mistake for political radio, or you're trying to help Billy Bob, or you're trying to hurt Sammy Sue, or something like that. That's when I get upset. And because that's all I have to do. I mean, that is my professional reputation as somebody who plays it straight and plays it even-handed, and that's what we've been doing in the news hour for 36 years. So anybody who suggests otherwise about me is going at me where it matters. So I am very thin-skinned. I'm less than skinned about that.
No skin.
No skin on that one.
But Kerry apologized later.
Kerry, he didn't apologize, but he said, the New York Times guy called me and he said he's doing a story and he wanted a hot quote about to hit on Lehrer, so I gave him one, which is the most irresponsible, stupid thing. But man, come on and say whatever he'd like to say.
That's an apology coming from a politician.
Well, it wasn't an apology. He called my home, he said he was sorry, he didn't really mean that, he thinks I'm wonderful. But Bob Kerry I'd known for years, that's what really offended me, what really upset me is I'd known Bob Kerry. I'd been a Marine. Kerry came back from Vietnam, he won the Medal of Honor, and I met him when he came back. At the end of the Vietnam War, we did a big special in Lincoln, Nebraska. He was just an angry returned war hero, and he went on into politics, and I continued to cover him throughout his career. I knew each other. I wouldn't say we were personal friends, but we were professional friends, and so it really bothered me when he did that. The rest of the stuff, I could handle, but I don't know.
Now, if there isn't enough to worry about candidates, the preparation, getting your facts right and everything, then they're just glitches.
Yes.
Just glitches that occur. Can you share a couple of war stories about glitches where you thought the whole thing wasn't going to happen?
Well, first, yeah, we didn't think we were going to have one in 2008, but once we did have 2008, I'm looking at the camera and say, good evening, I'm Billy Bob from Marshall, Mississippi and all of that, and they have a slit in the back of the set where they cover up the camera with the teleprompter so the people in the big shot won't be able to see it. And they had just a piece of black cloth goes over the teleprompter. And it comes down here in my ear, you know, be counting down and all of that, and I looked and they're supposed to have taken the black cloth off. And I looked at it, it's still black. Well, fortunately, brilliantly prepared as always, I had the script in front of me. And I looked and I started, but I couldn't remember, I had memorized my name and good evening, so I was able to say, good evening from the Wawa Center, you know, whatever, and I'm Jim Lehrer, and I looked down and I realized I was going to have to read the rest of it. And then I looked up and lo and behold, some fool who had forgotten to take the cloth down, pulled it up, and so I was saved for making whatever. In another case, in St. Louis, Bush Gore, another fool had left open it's called a key in television terms in the back, where he was somebody working, one of the producers or something, and everything this person said, I heard in my ear, in a very loud voice, and I could not turn off the sound because I had to hear cues and stuff like that. And so this person was calling shots and doing stuff like that, and it was just the longest 90 minutes of my life. There was a time also in St. Louis when we were about 3 minutes before we were to begin, and we lost audio. He couldn't hear me. I couldn't hear him. And I got a reputation for being really cool under fire because with 3 minutes not being able to hear, and we're sitting in a room now, and the spouses of the candidates are there, and all these folks there, and everybody's ready. It was a town hall meeting. Everybody's ready. And I had everything and I said, you mean because the guy, the stage manager, just said to me, you know, they're talking to you, gentlemen, clearly you're not hearing, and they tested, you know, we've lost sound. And to me, and I very calmly, I think I'm just going nuts at the time, but I very calmly said, I tell you what, why don't you tell them back there, because we got 3 minutes! And I said, why don't you tell them back there that they do not have to take the full 3 minutes to fix it. And both Mrs. Bush and Mrs. Gore told me afterward, that's the coolest move they've ever seen. Everybody laughed and all that. And literally 30 seconds before we were to go, I heard somebody talking to me, and they had fixed it.
What happened in Hartford when you tried to get on stage?
Oh! I was down in a little holding room, and they came and did makeup. As we take off my coat and my thing goes over your head, you know, with the credentials, get in there, and I was just off stage, one floor down, and went upstairs to finish, and he said, okay, time to come upstairs. Only 4 or 5 minutes before the debate was going to begin. Came upstairs with my executive producer of the NewsHour, and he was holding my coat, and we walked up, and this young Secret Service agent looks at me. He said, where's your credentials? Who are you? What are you doing about it? And I said, I'm the moderator. He said, where are your credentials? So my friend, my executive, trying to find my credentials. They're in the suit. And I thought this guy was going to grab me and throw me against the wall. Now, really, now we're about 3 minutes before. And I said to this kid, and I took every bit of coolness I've ever had in my life. I said, you need to know one thing. Through that curtain over there. You see this? You know, there's 3 people that are required to be over there in 3 minutes. And I'm one of them! Be still, you know. I think he was going to do something. And about that time, thank God, 2 older Secret Service agents came up and said, "Oh my God, what's going on? Wait, oh, Mr. Lehrer, you know, they almost threw him out." And the Secret Service called me and apologized.
Basically just went from that, sat down, and started the debate.
Exactly. Cool. Hairy stuff. Hairy stuff. Hairy stuff.
Last question, then we'll take questions from the audience. You've moderated so many debates. You've conducted countless interviews. Do you ever wish that you were the person on the other side of the microphone, that you were the one making the news instead of the one reporting the news? Never. Really never?
No. It's too late for that. You know, it's a state of mind for me now. 50 years of being an observer, 50 years of being an inquirer. I'm very comfortable doing that. I enjoy it. It's little boy, little girl work. I mean, it's being paid money to actually follow the science. Is it a fire engine? Is it a police car? Is it an ambulance? And I'm very comfortable with that. And I wouldn't change places with anyone.
That's great. It's good to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, questions from the floor. Please, in the front row.
As an observer and looking at the Republican debates this year, what's been the biggest surprise or disappointment?
John, here's a question. The question was, how many times have I been in Los Angeles? No, what about the surprises in the Republican debates? You know, all I have to say about the Republican debates, if anybody ever wants to say, "Oh, those debates don't matter," just remember the Republican debates. And remember the 2008 primary. Remember there were 40 primary debates in 2008, because remember there were no Democratic incumbent or Republican incumbent. And just go back to 2008 first. When the first Democratic debate in 2008, the worst debater on the stage was Barack Obama. Chris Dobbs was a better debater. Joe Biden was a better debater. Hillary Clinton was a better debater, and so on and so on. But in the second debate, Obama got a little better. And then the third, he got even better and better and better. He kept getting better and better and better. And that, I'm not saying that it cost him, that it caused him to win the election. It certainly had an influence. Look at what's happened this time. There used to be the primaries before 2008, and really this time, in a very dramatic way. The primaries were controlled by what happened on the ground in New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina. They've been nationalized forever by these debates. The field in the Republican world here has already been weeded out right before our very eyes. Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann, both of them, they became single digits because of their debate experiences, debate performances. Herman Cain, no matter what happened later, the fact is he was below single digits when the thing began, and then he suddenly went to the top because of his debate experience. Newt Gingrich, my God, Newt Gingrich, he's running for president? Are you kidding me? Debate experience is why he's leading the field now. These things that people are falling, you know, and who knows what the end result is going to be. And so those things are, quote, surprises, to answer your question. First of all, it never occurred to me that Herman Cain would ever have been at the top. It would never have occurred to me that at this stage of the game, Mitt Romney would just still be at 23%. And it would never occur to me that Newt Gingrich would be over 23%, or even near 23%. I mean, that's just, just a fact. So these debates, and then go on to the other, the Rick Perry. I mean, when Rick Perry came on, remember, he went right to the top. And I thought, boy, this is what it's going to be. You know, get used to it, boys and girls. And he's low single digits everywhere. Not, it's all because of all that. All that kind of stuff is surprising in a way, but it's the new world. It's always going to be that way.
Roz?
First of all, I can't believe that I'm sitting in a room with you and that there's not a television screen separating you from me. I'm looking out for a clicker.
get me off the screen. Get rid of this guy.
My question is, I appreciate the fact that you don't think you should influence the debates, but don't you feel a sense of responsibility if one of the candidates is blatantly inadequate or blatantly inadequate? I'm counting on you to take on the responsibility of pointing it out to the thousands of people who are looking and listening to you.
Well, I agree, yes, it's how you do it. The question is, she's saying that that a moderator has a responsibility to point out if somebody's been blatantly dishonest or something like that. I agree with that. It's just how you do it. And but I know this sounds, I don't know what it sounds like. I can tell you how I feel about things. The more you know is more, in my case, the more I know about something, the less opinionated I am about it. So there is no, it's very subtle in somebody. This is the truth. There are so many the truths. And there are facts, yes, but the truth is a very different thing, in my opinion, than a fact. I could say the world, I think that California should be divided into 5 states, period, paragraph. That's a fact. I said that. But should California be divided into 5 states? Well, there's no truth there. That is part of a, people look at it, that's not a very good example, but where people see things and they think it's the truth.
Ben, in the interview you had with Clinton, you were looking for the truth. I mean, you may have missed the "is was."
Yeah.
But you were trying to get him to own up, right?
I was not trying necessarily to get him to own up. I was trying to get him, because I didn't know whether he was going to own up. There had been very few, any real leaks about Monica Lewinsky ahead of time. So I didn't know, well, he might deny it, or he might admit it. But I was prepared. If he admitted, now think back, let's say he had said, instead of saying, there he is, no, he went through all that stuff, and he continued to deny it for a while after that. In fact, he continued to deny it for months after that. What if he had said, yes, Jim, the fact of the matter is I did have an affair with, I did have a sexual experience, an inappropriate sexual experience with this 21-year-old intern. Wouldn't he have then also to said, and therefore I have to resign? That is one of the scenarios that people say. He either had to quit or he had to lie. And he chose lying rather than quitting and hoping that the thing would come back, and that's kind of what happened. And,
I'm just pointing out that you did not shy away from asking him the direct.
No, I asked a very direct question. Yeah, very direct question.
Gentleman over here.
How much does entertainment contribute to your questions, and do you ever consult for your questions?
Entertainment has nothing to do with my questions. In fact, I have some little guidelines that I quote all the time about the news hour, and my own personal guidelines. And the last one of the guidelines is I am not in the entertainment business. I am not there to make people laugh or cry or whatever. They can laugh and cry if they want to, but that's based on the news. I don't know what my purpose is. Problem is, in the news business, if you start thinking, oh, let's get this thing, let's think about an emotional angle on these things. What you do, every time you introduce an outside influence of some kind, you increase the chances of getting it wrong. You just have to go with what you have and try to report it as straight as you possibly can. What was the second part of your question? That
You ever
Do you
consult?
consult on your questions?
well, I consult on the facts and the background and all the time doing the homework. That I have always in every one of my debates, when I'm finished, the only person I run the questions from is my wife, Kate. And she is very well informed. She's also straight as an arrow with me, and doesn't hesitate to say, you've got an apple instead of, you've got 2 apples and an orange, you've got an orange and an apple, a pear, or whatever, these don't match. And she's very good at, when I need, because we're operating in a kind of isolation toward the end, I just need to read them out loud to somebody. And that somebody can say, hey, come on, you missed the point here, or whatever. And she, say in the book, of course, every suggestion Kate makes, I absolutely agree with that. But she's the only one I really wrote about. Please.
Used to be a tradition in newspapers, the news was in the paper and they had a page, it was entitled editorial page. It was entitled maybe political statements.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are several TV channels, which report to be news channels, which, I'm sure I get agreement here if I say Fox News, that seem to have much more of an agenda on positions than they do on the reporting news. Okay, I think it's on both sides. Your program has never done that. Two questions. One is, what do you think? Do you think that there should be a role of the legitimate news to focus on that and to talk about that? You've always been talking about it since Nixon said you won't have to kick around anymore, do you, for that? And the other is that your program, or you, have to face the kinds of pressures that get put on people to increase their listenership or whatever by resorting to position taking as opposed to just
First of all, I agree with you that it's not just Fox, it's also MSNBC now, there's no question about it. And the whole thing is very troubling to me. In my view, there are three very legitimate forms of journalism, but there are three. One of them is straight news reporting, number what happened. The second is analysis, which means what happened, what does it mean? And third is opinion. What should I think about it? What do I think about it? And each one of those is a separate function, should be done separately and carefully labeled. That's my old-fashioned view of it. And it's troubling to me that there are those who are straying from that. However, in the new world order, the new revolution information, there's so much information, so much stuff that's coming at everybody. And it is the old days in a group like this, if we were to gather, the old days meaning 20 years ago, all of us would probably have read the same local, we'd all read the LA, let's say we live in LA, we'd all read the LA Times. We would have all watched one of the commercial television daily news programs and maybe read Time and Newsweek, and that would have been it.
Yeah.
And we would have come to an event like this, not like this, but let's say we came to talk about, to argue, to debate public issues or something, or discuss public issues. We would have all come basically with shared information. We all had the same facts, and then we would have brought our opinions to it and all of that. And to me, what we need to do is, instead of whining about it, which a lot of people are doing, is that we need to accommodate the new world order. A lot of times, the first thing people hear about in news development is somebody shouting on the radio, or from the right, or from the left, or on television, from the right or the left, or whatever. Those of us who would call news first responders, now have to think of ourselves as second and third responders. Someplace we can go after we hear on the radio some wild thing about where some president or presidential candidate was born or whatever, and you want to know what the facts are, that you can go someplace you trust and all that sort of stuff. And the answer to you, as far as the news hour is concerned, absolutely not. We've had no pressure on us at all to be more entertaining or to be more opinionated or whatever. Quite the contrary. In fact, with this it sounds weird. It doesn't sound weird. It won't sound weird to you all. You all are informed. The fact of the matter is, it's working to our advantage. Because people say, oh my God, it's the only place, they play it straight. And it used to be when we started 36 years ago, when Robert McNeil and I started this program 36 years ago, there were all kinds of places that did the same kind of reporting that we do now. And that we still do. So it is, nobody put any heat on us. And if they did, I would ignore it.
Time for one more question. This gentleman here. Yes.
So I was wondering, is it because you've enjoyed moderating so much that you've been in so many of these presidential debates, and also why you decided to keep moderating the Brooks and Shields segment on NewsHour?
The other question is that essentially why have I decided to keep doing Shields and Brooks on Friday nights? First of all, I enjoy it very much. it's civilized discourse. As I say in the book, it's the gold standard for civilized discourse. David Brooks comes very much from the right, comes from a conservative background in terms of his thinking and his journalism career. Mark comes from the liberal left, has worked for many of the liberal candidates, et cetera. But they come on Friday nights and they disagree from where they come from. Sometimes they disagree. A lot of the time they disagree on various issues and stuff like that. But they listen to each other. They don't talk over each other. They don't yell and scream at each other. They don't personally attack each other or anybody else. And they're both very, very nice people, and they're fun. And that's really the reason that I want to keep. I've got to be careful. I mean, here, I start to say here within the family. I realize I'm not here within the family, but I feel like I'm within the family because a lot of you are here because you told me this when I signed your book, that you watch the NewsHour. So I consider anybody who watches the NewsHour regularly as a member of the family. But I have to be careful because the same thing applies to doing a presidential debate. When I said you have to stay up on things, to moderate the presidential rights. Well, I am not going to moderate any other debate. I made that very clear when I wrote this book. I'm not going to do it. And I have to be very careful with Shields and Brooks that I don't get myself in a position, even on a Friday night, where something's happened that I have missed or something I haven't, because I didn't follow it as carefully. And I'm trying very hard to stay up. And when I get to a point where I feel like I'm just the click hasn't come. The click doesn't come, well, then I will. I've been gliding away for 2.5 years. One day, you all will look back and you'll say, "Where's that guy who's out here talk funny and all that sort of stuff?" And so that's what I've been trying to work on, and that's what and that'll happen.
Hopefully not too soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.